Well, it must be that time again. One of my favorite times when there's two auto call combination stations sitting on the floor. But one of them is not like the other. Of course, this is the, is it this side? Yeah. This is the Howe-Transmitter, as we know. And as you just heard, it did a single round. I guess I should open it this way, make a little more sense. All right. So there's been a few new discoveries since I last did a video on this. And so one of those discoveries is that this generates two different codes. Now, we knew that it was going to do something like that, but we didn't, in the video didn't know that. And it was also not working quite right. Let me explain why. So right now, as it's running, it's doing its thing. It's going to do 1, 1, 4, 5, and then stop. Now, when it does a fire code, let's do that. It's going to do 2, 1, 4, 5. 2, 1, 4, 5. Not only that, but it's going to do it 4 rounds. And so this wasn't quite working right in the last video. And the reason it wasn't working right is because when I just got this thing, you notice there's these little grooves here. And focus here. And in these grooves here, there's this thing here that rides in it. And it was like jammed up under here when I got it. And it had bent them. And so I tried to bend them back. And what happened is I basically bent it too much. And it was causing it so that it was always pushing against the one contact and only ever doing 1 round. And that was also causing other problems in that it wasn't resetting the mechanism fully. So the next time you then did the Watchman, it was doing the wrong code sometimes until it basically reset itself. So that's not happening anymore. Now it's doing the full 4 rounds of the fire code. The other interesting thing I just figured out, some of these, I remember I mentioned last time, I've seen them with a lamp. And, I have the one that has that jack there, and there's some that have a lamp here. I know what that is now. And so let me put the glass back in, and that is actually going to explain what it is. So the lamp is actually the recall lamp, and it would have been triggered when these contacts get reset back, and it runs again, but it only runs 1 round of the fire code. So you hear the click? And now that it's fully reset, if I run the Watchman again, get that thing in there. They don't make this thing easy to do blind. 1. See, now it's correct. It's 1, 1, 4, 5 for the Watchman. So, another interesting thing that I realized since that last video, of course, is upside down. If you look on here, it says Comb FW145. So that's combination fire Watchman 145. What does that mean? It means it does 2 different codes. And so how did I have some idea that that might be the case before I ever even had this thing? Well, because I had this thing. This looks like it's the same, but I mentioned before, this is the transponder version. This is not the same. And so this has a really old school looking circuit board in there, and it's all put back together, so I can't really show it right now, but it has little jumper wires on it, and it looks almost like jumper wires instead of dip switches. And this is one of the old auto call transponders. I don't quite understand how it works, but my best guess of it would be that it generates two different codes. Because if you look here, it's hard to see. It says code A, code B, serial number, part number, right? It's very similar to what this thing said to some extent. You can fill in the blanks. I've seen other ones of these with them all filled out. It's not all torn up. So I know that's what it says. And so I had some idea that this was going to generate two codes. But last video I did, first of all, I wasn't paying attention to what they were. And second of all, it wasn't working right. So let's take a closer look at this mechanism, I guess. See if I can show you exactly what the problem was. If you see on this bottom row here, there's two sets of these contacts. And so these wheels, as they spin, it's supposed to, lift and basically shift it from one side to the other. It's almost supposed to flip-flop from this side to that side. And yeah, it was just stuck on the pushing outward because I'd bent this little, basically this little tine on the front. There's like this, yeah, that one right there. This little tine here was bent out too much, and it was always pushing this out. Right now, it only pushes it out when it's on the up position like that, which is what it's supposed to do. See, there's like adjustments for this thing. It's got all sorts of craziness. I'm gonna take a closer look at the mechanism here for the for this thing. What I guess the Watchman switch, whatever you call it. It's similar to the other one in that on this side there's a it's basically just like a leaf spring, and then as you push the key in, it just lets you lift that, which then lets you spin this thing. And this is just like a little metal sandwich. It's got, I think it's two halves, and it's just like a disc on each side, and it just sandwiched through there. And yeah, as you can see, it is running. So maybe we could do a cool side view here. I don't know if we ever did this last time. I haven't really ever talked about how the Howe-Transmitter quite works. I might have to do it on the other side. The Howe-Transmitter is a code wheel, but it's not a typical code wheel. So always talk about those funny Honeywell stations where the decimal code wheel or whatever. That is kind of similar to this, actually, in that if you look at them, it has almost like contacts on the sides of the wheel as opposed to using the edges for driving anything. And that's the case with these as well. Now you do see teeth on the edges, but that's literally to move the wheel with this mechanism. So the actual contacts of this code wheel, if you see, are push pins that are pushing up against the bottom of the wheel as it's moving. And that's also how it does the two separate codes, because there's different pins on the bottom and you can choose which pins you use. It's rather ingenious if you think about it. I mean, the fact that this was patented in like the 30s or something, and I think it was originally being used in the 20s even, is just crazy to me. And yeah, what can I say? There's a reason that these are probably one of my favorite pull stations of all time, because the technology is just simply ahead of its time. And if you think about how they used these, they were using them on automatic sprinklers. That was the first use case in the patent. They didn't even have pull stations yet. They had sprinkler systems, and they wanted to know which part of it went off. And so that was the original place you would see a Howe-Transmitter. And then it was, it was probably competing with stuff like the early alarms from Charles Potter, of all people. We found patents of those going back to 1918, something like that. So needless to say, sprinkler alarms have been around for a very long time. And the Howe-Transmitter dates almost as far back as them. And then the combination station with the dual codes, I think that probably came a little later. I think that was in the 30s or something like that, 20s or 30s, where they started doing that. But it's something they advertised heavily. Another thing mentioned, maybe I didn't mention, I mentioned something about jet fuel in the last one, and I believe these were used in airports and possibly military bases. I did talk to a friend of mine. He was in the Navy, and he swore up and down for some reason these look Chicago to him, like Chicago base or Chicago something. And ironically, I just bought some autocall stuff and it came from Chicago, so it's making bells go off in my head a little bit. I wonder if these are from Chicago somehow. I don't know. If anyone has any clues, I'd be very interested to know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else since the last video we found. Definitely suspect that they were used for like guard duty or watchman, that kind of thing. We've also found these kind of things in like museums, I think, but it's all like the theme is very government, you know, and or airport or public service or anything like that. You know, it's public facilities or government facilities. It seems to be the general theme, and also high end. These were not used in places that were, you know, cheaping out on. They had the regular coded pools for that were at the same time, and they even looked like this, but there was just like a door here, and I have one. You've probably seen it in other videos. I think it does 1, 2, 3, the one that I have, or maybe it does 3, 2, 1. I don't know, one of those. Anyway, yeah, those are not these though. Those were like the cheap coded option. These were the high-end coded option, and of course I do have the one that just does fire, but even that would have been a high-end option. The combination is just for the case where you had guards that also, you know, it was like a dead man thing or something to know that your guard was there. And so, yeah, very cool. Yeah, the whole surface thing, I mean, I was even talking to him about that a little bit. I was like, well, what would the options be for other than surface? He's like, I don't know, sea, air? like, right? Like, what does that mean? That's crazy. And so just the fact that it's dated from 1943, I mean, to even use metal in those years, wasn't it like under, like for the war and everything, under tight control? So you can only imagine these were military, right? They had to have been. So it's interesting. I don't know. It's really hard to say. I would love more information about them. It's so hard to find anything about these nonetheless, get them working. My next plan is to try to get the fire one working with this one. I'd love to get another combination one with the Howe-Transmitter, but I'm really trying not to go too overboard on this. I was hoping that's what this was, but unfortunately, you know, I had actually bought this first before this, and it was a bit of a surprise when I found that transponder in it. So that's another interesting thing to try to figure out someday, but for some reason this one is not quite working right. The whole thing has got epoxy on it, and I think it was getting wet. If you look at this thing, it looks like it was getting dripped on, and inside of it, I had to do a lot of rust removal and restoration. It's looking a lot better now, but that board might be in need of some repair. So, needless to say, the Howe-Transmitter is what I really came here for, and that's what this one has. So, yeah, really excited to have figured out the dual code aspect of it. Also this box, I suspect this was an older box that was maybe more period correct for it. My friend seemed to say this is the box for it. Like, even though this box is really cool, in more like mid-century industrial look of this, he seemed to think was more correct. I almost kind of am starting to agree with him. You know, it's growing on me. I like this box too, but anyway, could go on all day about it. I do want to see if I can get some of this paint off of here. It's like overspray. And that's the other thing that makes me think military. It's like, why would they paint like greenish paint? Like, yeah. Looks like military color, doesn't it? Yep. So, lots of interesting ideas there. I might see if I can get some badges made for this thing, because it is missing these, or maybe even just steal them from this, because I can't really use it yet. So, figure all that out. But until next time, hopefully some more progress on more Howe-Transmitter stuff. We shall see.